Welcome back to the Social Distance Podcast, guys. We promised a rest day edition episode. We're a day late. You'll find out why in the show. George is racing at the moment in Seaview Tour. He's doing well over there. He's third on GC at the moment. Should hold that today in the final stage. So we're joined by Scotty McGory, who's a Olympic Madison champion in Sydney. He's heading over to the Olympics again, as he has done in the past, to commentate on multiple different cycling events. He's obviously well in tune with the Tour de France, so we talk a lot about that. We talk about the media scrum there. We talk about nutrition again, how we service the riders during the race. We spoke to Durbo about that a little bit last week, but we go a bit deeper into that. And we talk about the gravel stage. We talk about who's going to win the Tour de France, all of that kind of bullshit, Cav. So yeah, enjoy the show. Thanks for coming on, Scotty. Like, share, subscribe.
And if George is listening, he would have hated that intro because you've given away the whole fucking show.
Enjoy.
Let's just run the intro and wing it like we always do and see what comes out of it.
Let's get ready to rumble! Front kick.
Just getting forward and dance move chat.
My radar's going pretty hard at the moment. I think we should.
Will you shut up, man?
That escalated quickly.
We're going to need to get some more qualified guests on the show, eh?
Scotty was a bit concerned just before we hit record that he hadn't been sent the run sheet for the episode.
Oh, mate, there's never been one.
There's no
the
run
intro
sheet.
just explained it all. The intro explained it. It was quite funny.
Yeah.
The run sheet, we just run with it. We don't have a run sheet.
Yeah.
The intro's a bit dated because Joe Biden sounded sharp.
It doesn't have to be that long ago, mate.
Yeah.
No. He's lost his mind, hasn't he?
Oh, mate.
Scotty.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, we're going to talk politics. They are in a bit of a pickle, aren't they, over in the US, unfortunately. If that's their best two choices, the choice between those two gentlemen, oh my God, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
We always start off talking about 10 minutes and then we start realizing, hang on, this is a cycling podcast. We need to circle back. And I suppose we've got the biggest bike race on in the world at the moment. And a lot's happened, Sam, in between shows. Congratulations on behalf of everyone.
I'm tired, actually.
Explain what happened at the tour, mate.
Well, I should still be at the tour. Well, I was supposed to still be at the tour. But obviously Hannah was pregnant, and then I was planning to come home on the second rest day, which was like eight or 9 days before the due date. But little Alvie, our daughter, decided to come 3 weeks early, so I had to leave the tour. Actually, it was a bit of a journey, Jonesy and Scotty. I'll tell you that. I was in Dijon in France, and I got a call from Hannah at 4:15 in the morning, and I was kind of thinking like, she's probably not calling to say hi this time of day.
Nah.
She had just started labour then, but I was a nine-hour drive from Andorra, so I had to sort of pack my shit, have a quick shower. Thankfully, our head soigneur, he's an animal, he's a machine. So like, I need to get a car, and then I went down to the truck, but he was already up in the truck making sandwiches for all the staff for the next stage. So thankfully, he was up, grabbed some car keys.
The DS was doing it.
No, head soigneur.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. We just eat the sandwiches. We don't make them.
Right.
And then got in a car and hightailed across France. Probably got about 100 speeding fines. Made it back to Andorra like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then, I mean, like, you kind of initially thinking like, oh, there's time. Like generally, like labours seem to be long, but you're like, fuck, it's still 9 hours until I'm going to be home, and there is a chance that you can miss it. So like, I didn't take any chances of driving the speed limit, but I made it back, and then actually it was a long labour. So 5 o'clock the next morning, our daughter was born. So now I'm back at home in Andorra, watching the Tour de France like everybody else from the couch.
And how's the sleep, mate?
Yeah, it's low. But the problem is that you're fucking pinned before you even start being a parent, because the labour, you're up for 30 hours for the labour. By the time she was born, I was like, fuck, thank God, I can go to sleep.
And then you got a little human to look after.
Yeah.
We were saying as blokes, like, you're helpless. Like, your role doing any of that stuff is just to stand there going, good job, like a coach. And you're seeing, the woman in absolute agony, and you feel helpless.
And then you get the shutdown. Like, you try to be like encouraging, they're like, fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I enjoyed the 5 stages I did at the Tour de France behind the team car, behind the wheel.
Is it more stressful
Then what?
than any other race? Like, do you feel the stress of the tour?
It's bigger, and I guess you two know it. You guys know you two have probably seen the insides out and the movings of the Tour de France probably more than I have, because as a sports director, you're in the bubble there, so you kind of things run a little bit as business as usual. Of course, it's a bigger show and there's more people around, and getting into start areas and getting into finish areas and things is a little bit more chaotic. But ultimately, we're still behind the fence in the bubble. Whereas when you guys were over there, like, when was that together? 15 years
2008 to 2011, we were running the 1-2 punch.
You guys are right in the mixer, so you see it even more, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely, we did. Well, 2013, because we had B-roll come in and take over, step into your shoes. But yeah, Dan was because Dan, for anyone watching that doesn't know AFL football, Australian rules football, Dan was a pretty good footy player back in his home metropolis of Sale, and
in his own mind. I thought you were going to say
no, yeah,
league leading goal kicker 1999, mate, in the Gippsland League.
What did you tell the coach? You're behind it.
Clear the forward line and feed the pig.
Feed the pig. Just get the ball down to the pig, DJ. But it was awesome for when we're in the media scrums. Because there's no etiquette. Well, there's supposed to be an etiquette after those stage finishes, but you just got to get in there with the camera. You typically at the Tour de France can't ask questions. They'll grab the rider pretty quickly, so you don't actually do an interview. But we're able to do that at the Giro. We're able to get in there first and interview Cav after stage wins and things like that. But at the Tour, you can't. But Dan was just so good at getting in there with his football skills with the camera, just to stick that camera straight in the face.
When you talk about interviewing Cav after a stage win, I just think of stage 8. Was it? Tell the viewers, the listeners, they love these stories.
All right,
it was a protest day.
It was a protest day. So it was Milan. So Dan and I were there for Fox Sports. I'm doing interviews after every stage. And pretty good relationship with Cav. He's one of the favourites, obviously, for the flat stage back then, 2009. And Milan was chaos. They had these circuits in Milan and the roads weren't closed properly. There was traffic on the circuit. It was just crazy. So the riders just basically had a protest and rolled around for ages. What that meant, they even stopped on the finish line to explain to the public what they were doing, why they weren't racing. But they promised that, if the organisers, which they did, get everything sorted, they would at least race the last 3 laps or something, 30 Ks.
So this was at the Giro, was it?
That was the Giro, 2009. 2009, I think, wasn't it? Or 2010, 2009. And so basically they're saying, look, we're going to do 30 Ks at the end. So they just rolled around. What that meant was the finish was incredibly late. Like we were, a couple of hours behind schedule. So what are we going to do? We just sit down at the cafe and the restaurant and think, I'll maybe have a beer. Then we start telling stories. So Dan's stories and my stories, we both got a few. And then the table next to us are listening in on our stories as well. So, I'm thinking, you know what, I've had a few beers here. I've still got a job to do. And as soon as I thought that, the table next to us, the American guy, had just shouted another round. He brought another round of beers for us because he thought the stories were so good. He wanted them to go on. So by the time the stage finished, I'm toast, mate. I am toast. So anyway, we get Cav, great access, straight to Cav after he wins this crazy stage. I do the interview. Then we get back to the hotel later. And Dan says, Scotty, I'm going to have to cut your question out. So why? Well, the question was fine, wasn't it? So no, have a listen to this. So it started with, Cav, interesting stage, but a win nonetheless. I was totally drunk.
Slurring the words. We just had to cut it. Cut it out.
So good. Cav would love that. I guess he's been the story of the tour, hasn't he? It's been we were going to do a rest day pod, but it's obviously a day late. But the first 9 stages of the Tour de France, I think have been. I've got my own opinions on the gravel stages, but nonetheless, as an entertainment thing, there was a great stage to watch. And ultimately, the whole 9 stages has been awesome because it's been a different winner every stage, which is obviously not what we saw at the Giro. Breakaway's been able to be successful already from day one. I don't think that first stage breakaway was planned to be successful by most teams, but it was nonetheless. Stage 2 again, breakaway was successful. We had the first mountain stage, and then obviously we had Cav finally winning his 35th. So I think ultimately these first 9 days of this tour they've been pretty exciting. They've thrown up. It's made viewers, I'm sure, want to keep watching this race because although they do that anyway because it's the Tour de France, at the Giro it was a bit like, it's a mountain stage. We'll just turn it on maybe and watch Pog win again. But I think so far it's been a great tour and it's going to be fucking good to watch for the rest of it. Actually, I think the GC battle is going to be good. I got a feeling it's going to be good.
Last week for sure, because like Vinegar's going to get better, and I reckon Remco's the big smoky. Like, come to that last time trial, Pog's going to need what, a minute? You reckon?
Nah, less.
We'll
Pog
see.
might even
We'll
win.
see.
Pog might even win that time trial. It's uphill, most of it.
Yeah, and a little bit different, isn't it, at the end of 3 weeks? But and don't forget, like you mentioned all the different stage winners, but Binny Grimet did get 2 stage wins, but first Black African to win stages of the Tour de France. That's going to be massive in Africa. It's such a big opportunity if they can put some funding towards that. That could get some real interest on that continent.
And for sure, he's going to win the green jersey.
Oh, he's up by what, 100 points at the moment.
Yeah.
But I remember Dan Tekla-Hymanot when he had the polka dot jersey for 3 days in 2015 or whatever it was. They did a ticker tape parade when he got home, and he got like a house given to him or something from the government. They went all out. So how are they going to go with a stage winner and the green jersey? It's going to be crazy. And then I remember Dan, when he was at training camp, showed us photos of the national road title there, and there was 1 million spectators. Like, it was insane.
Yeah.
So it was already.
Froome won the tour though. Froome was Kenyan, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
British passport. I think when he won.
Yeah, I think they were pretty keen to make sure he was on a British passport when that was happening.
Yeah.
But I remember when you're talking about Cav winning stage of the Tour de France, I've obviously talked about our Giro experiences, but the most famous one would have been in 2009, Scooter, when Cav won a stage and he's passed through, and you got the famous grab with Mark Renshaw, his lead-out man, and you went biffo with one of the Aussie crew who weren't happy that you were doing the interview with Renshaw. I'd never seen anything like it in terms of, we've seen, remember the Beretta pulled his wheel out once and whacked a rider with it. And that
Rui Costa. Rui Costa. Yeah, he's still going.
This was the same level of fierceness, but with 2 dueling mics. Like there was the jab to the rib cage. What's your memories of that incident?
No, well, nothing, mate. I was always polite. I was following the etiquette of journalism, being totally upright. I think he may have said something like, "Are you threatening me, Scott?" And I think you were thinking, Scott will back down here. Yeah. And I said, I absolutely effing am threatening you.
Yeah, it happened in the mix zone. Yeah. It continued in the mix zone. And you've got these 2 Aussie crews button heads. And then we had this crew from China, remember? They said, oh, no, you can go in front of us. And we said, oh, we don't have a big audience. They said, no, neither do we. And we said, how many people watch yours? And they go, oh, it's like 20 mil or something.
The population of Australia watches theirs. Yeah.
I'm starting to see why you guys aren't there this year.
Yeah, we've been banned. No, but also back then, that was the silliness of all of that, which, we're just there doing what we're asked to do and paid to do. And look, we had great access, didn't we? We were getting really good access with these guys. I knew so many of them, which of course that helps. But I guess the other network just had they'd had a monopoly for so long, and to have another Australian crew was such a shock to them. We were okay to play second fiddle because we weren't doing live. We were sending our stuff to Fox News in Australia, so we had plenty of time. It didn't matter. So we tried to be nice, but I guess it was just such a shock to them to have any competition at all. And when we were getting interviews that they weren't getting or exclusive stuff, by the time it went to air and then that got back through the hierarchy of that network and then across to the crews in France, then that just created this rivalry that was completely unnecessary. All we're trying to do is bring sport to Australia, the sport we love.
But it's changed a lot now. Like we were talking to Phil Liggett yesterday, and we were talking about the NBC presence on the ground. When we were there, we used to just go to their truck. So NBC would have this massive truck in the mix zone They had awesome TV, fully catered. So if anyone didn't finish their lunch, you might get a half-eaten thing of rice or whatever just to get you through till dinner. But they had a crew. Remember, we asked them. We said, "Oh, we're from Fox." They go, "Oh, wow. How many guys you got in your crew?" We said, "Us." Like 3 of us at the time. And they had 200 people that used to go on the ground. Whereas this year, Phil said they've scaled it right back. So everyone's on your old body clock, Bewls, getting up at 3 a.m, basing most of it out of America. And then they just have a skeleton crew on the ground in France.
Yeah, I think because obviously COVID changed all that, eh? And like when crews could go, they couldn't travel to the Tour de France. They had to do everything from studios around the world. Obviously, NBC's case in America, and then I think they probably just realized, fuck, it's actually way cheaper.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah,
we're saving a shitload of money just keeping everyone here and just having commentators on the ground.
That's it.
Well, we're doing that for the Olympics. So I'm working with Channel 9 Bewls. Dan knows this, but working for Channel 9 commentating road track, BMX and mountain bike on the ground in Paris. Awesome, looking forward to it. But the last time Channel 9 did the Olympics was 2012, London. And then our big meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, they brought up some stats on how big the broadcast is. So it's 10 times the coverage that we'll be presenting this time compared to 2012, and with less than half the staff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
So I think so. It's just across the board. Everything has become so much more expensive, and technology's better. They can do more with less.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the technology, you can just stream like, and the broadcasters, they have like the direct line as well to the coverage, don't they? So it's not when you watch it on TV, you may not know there's people who watch Tour de France from home on the couch, but it's actually like a 30-second delay to where they actually are on the road, which we kind of discovered a little bit throughout this year, trying to use coaches at home, which we're doing at the Tour de France. We'd have a coach at home sending us updates because the TV coverage in the car is pretty unreliable, the phone reception sometimes as well. So sometimes you don't really understand or see what's happening so quickly in the team car. So we'd have coaches sending us updates like, okay, there's a brake moving, we've got Derek G in there, whatever. But then we started to realize that they're actually like 500 meters behind. So the race was changing quite quickly. But the broadcasters have the direct line, so it's actually there's no delay. So that's the technology again coming in. So you can comment on things. I guess if you say fuck in the middle of a broadcast, they can cut it. I don't know what they do, but I didn't make that slip up last year, thankfully. But yeah, it's interesting how it all works now.
Yeah.
Especially with
I'll give you Tokyo, because of the pandemic, it was Channel 7 doing the Olympics for Tokyo. Phil Liggett was commentating the road race with me. So he was doing it from London, and myself and Anna Mears were doing it from Australia. So they could do it so there was always a delay. I think it was what they did to try and sync it up a little bit, and they couldn't have it perfect, but they would delay the footage to us by 1 second, and then get it to Phil 1 second before us, because there was a delay in his audio coming to us. So in the end, we always knew that there was going to be a half a second delay from whatever Phil says to us, but we'll at least see the footage at the same time.
Right.
So we just had to make sure if Phil was saying something, we just gave a little bit of a breath afterwards in case he continued. Otherwise, we would step over the top of him. So yeah, they're able to do that. Like send it to him or send the footage to him faster than it was getting to us, so that the audio would somehow kind of match. It worked. There's no way of seeing any difference. But track cycling, you wouldn't have been able to do that. There wouldn't have been. Things happen too quickly on the velodrome to be able to do it like that.
What was fascinating chatting with Whitey yesterday was what I've really liked in the broadcast this year is getting those snippets of the team car communications. And then he said how teams got offered to be part of that, but the money was terrible. And then he said, we just didn't want people hearing that info. And he said, teams are actually listening to that. And he goes, most of it's just dribble, but you might get one or two nuggets that they go, oh, okay. So they use it to their advantage. What do you reckon of it, Bewls?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit the same as Whitey to some degree. In theory, they don't. Yeah, they're not supposed to use anything strategic or tactical, and but they do, and generally they do after the fact, maybe, or during the fact, not before the fact. But I noticed actually on the gravel stage the other day that they broadcast the UAE stuff with radio where they said go full gas on the sector to Pogacar, and it actually was like almost before he did it. It was pretty close. It might have been just as he was starting or something, but like those sorts of things you can see, like teams don't want out there necessarily. But I think in general they seem to they seem to be pretty good at what they put out there.
Do you think they're feeling pressure from Formula One in terms of how they broadcast that, right? Like the races there?
Yeah,
because they're obviously at another level.
Like I look at it from two sides. Like I can look at it from Whitey's perspective. Like there's a sports director, a guy in the car who's trying to win a bike race and come up with strategies, and you don't want other teams to know what their strategy is. Of course, I understand that, and I agree with that. And then on the other side, I'm also I want the sport to grow, and I think it's an insight into the sport that didn't exist 2 years ago. And people who watch at home, they probably find it pretty cool. Like even I find it cool. Like sometimes it's interesting just to hear what other sports directors say, or how other sports directors talk, or how they communicate, or what sort of language they use. Like so, like I find it interesting, and from the entertainment point of view, I think it's quite cool. But I also see the other side of the coin as well. But all that stuff's good, man. Like even the like obviously Netflix has been really cool for the Tour de France as well. On the bikes now, all the riders have a little tracker. So that's how they give you those gaps. Like, yes, again, going back to the gravel stage after that, one of those sectors when everyone walked up it and then Roglic was behind, like they could give the exact, like he's 175 meters behind Pogacar. Like that kind of stuff. It's all cool. Like it's all stuff that grows the sport and gives people more insight. And, you know, when you look at Formula One, you can download the Formula One app and you can like look at different drivers and different camera views and all of that stuff. And if cycling heads that way, I think ultimately it's good for the sport.
It's a value add. How's this, Sarah? So this is my take on, you know, there's always talk about the weight of the bike. Now, when disc brakes came in, kind of changed it because it was pretty easy to get under the 6.8 kilogram weight limit. And, you know, a lot of punters, I hear it all the time, say, oh, they should get rid of that limit or take it down to 6.5 or 6.3, whatever it might be. But my take on that is we're not that far from having live cameras on the bikes. Okay, you got your GoPros, which Velon use, so it's all post-produced stuff, which is interesting, but it's not live. And the only way to have live is to make sure that, you know, all the bikes weigh the same, right? So disc brakes came in, which changed it a little bit. But, you know, if teams all had, say, 6.3 kilo bikes, but the weight limit was still 6.8, they'd all have to carry some kind of ballast to be at 6.8. And then on 15 of those bikes, 20 of those bikes could actually be cameras that could broadcast live. Because the GoPro, it takes too much weight and technology to add to a bike to be able to get the live signal, which I think would be a game changer. So that's something I hope that the UCI considers if they are going to think about changing the minimum weight of bikes, because if they do bring it back down lower, that'll take that opportunity away. And it might, you know, we might be 3, 4, 5 years away from having the technology to have live cameras in the race. But if they change it too soon, we won't be able to do it ever.
But they don't include the weight of those cameras, and so I think anything that's detachable isn't included in the weight. But it actually doesn't matter. Like, if they just made it mandatory that every single bike had to have the same cameras on it, regardless of whether your bike ends up at 12 kilos or not. Like, as if you kept the weight limit 6.8, your bike without all that stuff attached to it, without a Garmin attached to it, without a camera attached to it, had to be 6.8. Then okay, yeah, there's always going to be differences in bike weights, but that's how it is. But then you made it mandatory for everybody to have the same weight of cameras on there. Then someone's bike might weigh 7.5, someone's might weigh 7.7. The weight will go up, but the difference is still the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think that's the next big step. You talk about radios and all that kind of insight, and the Velon in the Peloton stuff has been great. But again, it's always after the fact. You know, it's interesting to see it, but you want to see it live.
But they also want to slow racing down. Like that's actually a big push from the UCI at the moment. So there's going to be a lot of different rules come in the future. They want to maybe slow it down is not the right word, but they want to make it safer. Obviously, there's a big, massive push, and we've spoken about it quite a lot on the show before. There's a big push for safety, And there's a whole bunch of things that they're trialing out at the Tour de France. For example, the 3 kilometer rule in the sprint stages, they're trialing out 4 kilometers and 5 kilometers, and they're not using 3 kilometers. They're going to see if that has an effect on crashes in the final. There's also talk of changing how teams use rider radios. So it might only be 50% of the riders in the team can have radios with them. And then they were talking about a limit on how deep a wheel can be. Like all of these sorts of things to try to make it safer. And I think essentially what they're trying to do is kind of take some urgency out of everybody in the peloton hearing the same message from a team director that you need to be in this right-hand corner and 1 kilometer in the front. And also try to slow the racing down a little bit. So why not? I mean, one way to slow the racing down is make the fucking bikes heavier.
Yeah, true. Yeah, well, they do that in NASCAR. They have the restrictors in NASCAR to make them slower on certain circuits and things like that. Different sport, I guess. Have you heard about this 25% increase in crashes since they changed, UCI changed the rules on feeding? So you know the feed, now you can feed wherever you want, right? So it used to be just, you say 2 designated feed zones per race, short stages 1. And because of COVID, that's when they changed the rule that you could feed wherever you want throughout the stage. Okay, so, and I'll tell you, I'm still thinking about whether I'm going to dob him in and tell you who it was that told me this from the UCI.
Do it.
Hey?
Do it.
But he's not working with them anymore. He left a couple of months ago. But he was certainly ahead of a lot of innovation at the UCI. So
Michael Rogers.
His initials might be Michael Rogers, and he was saying that they've actually seen a spike, 25% increase in crashes since they brought in that rule, which was about COVID. It wasn't about anything else other than COVID let everybody space things out, so not all the staff are in one feed zone around the stages. So by doing that, the riders, and as a DS, the riders aren't coming back to the cars to get their bottles as much because they know they can feed from the front. Right, so everyone's just trying to get more to the front because that's where they know in 10Ks we're going to get more food from the front. And they reckon that, Michael said that 25% increase in crashes since that rule came in.
Are they
now
less likely?
Everybody likes it.
Are they less likely to change rules afterwards? Because then they make a change and they go back, or they sort of like, all right, we've made the call, let's just leave it for a while.
I think they'll change it.
Yeah, that's 25% is ridiculous. Like that should have been a change straight away. But the thing is, all the teams have made the adjustment, and they now get. And I've heard Durbo on this podcast and on others talking about how much carbs and how much energy everybody's now consuming, and why they're racing so much faster, why they're not as fatiguing as much. It's because of this rule change has also increased the amount of opportunities you get to get feed from the side of the road.
Yeah.
Right. So the fueling has changed. They don't want to go back now because that means they're not going to get fuel anywhere near as much if they have to go back to the cars all the time.
And it does change. It would in some ways slow the racing down because now they race from start to finish quite often because there's never a moment where the bunch goes, all right, let's have a bit of a truce here. We're all fucking thirsty and hungry. And go back to our team cars and get some food because they know they can keep racing because every 40K or 30 kilometers or whatever it might be, you've got that on the side of the road. So you can keep actually racing throughout a whole stage without ever the fear of going back to a team car and losing positions or not being part of the race anymore for a little period of time. So I think there is some sense to it.
Do they still do the group piss?
Yeah.
I was going to
Less
say,
so.
if you wipe that out.
Didn't you see the POG do it the other day? So POG actually stopped to do that, which caused a bit of a bottleneck, and one of the guys went off into the field and crashed. Because of POG wanting to have
That was great. And POG was just like looking
POG.
at him.
He's still midstream, and the guy's gone into the wheat field beside him.
Speaking of bottle points or service points, I've just been doing them this morning actually.
Are you still plotting out stuff on the Premiere?
Yeah, well, I was doing all the service points or bottle points or feed points or whatever you want to call them for the tour while I was there. So I said I'd just carry on and do them all. So I've nearly finished. I've done all the stage, basically all the stages now, bar 3. But it's quite an interesting thing. It's like it seems simple. Like, I just put a guy here, and a guy here, and then but you've actually got to look at like, okay, firstly how much staff you have, how many cars you have, and then the Tour de France is different because you you can only go on the race course if you've got the right sticker. And then like once you leave the race course, it's very hard to get back on the race course. You can't go on the backwards on the race course, or you can't go in front of the race to get to the finish line. So you've got to like do these service points and also find a way for that at least one of those cars to get from where they were feeding to the finish line before the riders get there. So you got to like look at like Google Maps and work out how they're going to get there. Can they get there in time? And then you've got to like look at like the obvious point to do a bottle point is like on the top of a climb. And then so you can't, but you just plug in the bottle point on the top of a climb. But then you look on Google Street View and it's fucking one lane and it's like a rock wall here and a rock wall there. Where they're going to park the car. So you got to look at all that sort of stuff as well. Like, okay, that makes sense to feed on that climb, but actually there's no possible way for them to park the car. And then on top of that, the Tour de France, you get to the top of like Galibier or whatever, and there's 100,000 people. So it's actually like it's kind of fun, like in some ways, because you got to look into like all these little bits and pieces about it. So I've been doing that.
You should create an app where you can. It's almost like a game of life where you can control bottle points.
Well, AI will be able to do it soon, probably.
Yeah. Hey, there's a business idea.
Yeah, AI to do bottle points. If your individual riders in your team are unable to feed, then their energy drops down in the game or the app if you don't get to the strategic spots in time before they run out, which is exactly what it is in a race, isn't it? It's the same
Soignier Wars, call it.
Well, they used to do that. They used to race. The Swannies used to race, like, truly like bloody idiots, thinking it's still a public road. But they used to race to the feed zone and then race to the finish line. And, dangerous.
Yeah, they do. But it's all like all those service points, bottle points, feed points, whatever. It's all in some ways it's all part of strategy now because of how important the fueling is. Like Durbo was saying on the last episode, like, if you're not getting 120 grams of carbs in and everybody else in the race is, you're already on the back foot. And then you have to look at like just the strategic points of the race. Like, okay, where's it going to kick off? Where are they going to start attacking? How long is it going to take for the breakaway to go? You might be like, oh, they can feed from the car until the feed zone for the first 90K. But if it's a stage where it's like breakaway is most likely going to win, it could take 90 kilometers for the breakaway to go. And if you want your team to be in the breakaway, they can't come to the car, just like we were saying 5 minutes ago. So you got to like strategically put bottle points during that 90K. If you're in the breakaway and you're racing the final, then you need strategically to place bottle points in the final so they're getting what they need for the final of the race. So there's a little bit of thought that goes into it. It's not actually just as simple as it used to be, where, like you say, Scotty, it was like you could only feed in 2 spots. Designated feed zone here, designated feed zone there. Everybody went there, boom, done, went home.
Then you've got another factor. You've got certain people that are guns at giving out bags and bottles, and then you've got others that are spuds. They don't have those confidence or that. There's a bit of an art to it. It took me a couple of years. I remember the first time I gave out bottles was at the Tour, and Valverde was just dying, and he reached out for a bottle, and I didn't know if you gave a bottle to an opposition rider or not. So I sort of held it out in front, and then at the last minute I panicked and lifted it up. He went to snatch it, and then he said something in Spanish that wasn't pleasant. And then Quaddy looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing, mate?" I said, "Yeah, but he's not on our team." He goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, just give the man a bottle." And I was like, "Oh, shit, I don't know."
My dad did the same at Paris-Roubaix in 2016 when he came over, Jonesy. The Heyman one. He went with Gita and did all the sectors.
I think Emu was with him as well.
Yeah. And Dad said he was holding a bottle at the end of the sector, and Sagan went to grab a bottle off Dad, and he just fucking went yank. Sagan
and Valverde. Gee, I tell you what, you pick them.
Yeah. Do you have to factor that in though, Bewls? Do you have to pinpoint, right, this is who's doing the bottles, or they're just open to the team to work that out?
Yeah, we normally have we have teams, so we kind of try to keep the staff together. But like in some races, like the Tour is one of them to an extent, but more in the classics where it's almost impossible to feed from the car. You have to try to have as many points as you can, and also with wheels, because there's a bigger chance of flat tires and all that sort of stuff. So there you kind of have like for example, Amstel and Liège, we had 7 or 8 feed teams, so 7 or 8 cars with 2 people per car. But but when you get to that level, you're using the doctor, the team doctor, or you're using someone's friend who lives down the road, or so you're using you're using guys that are less experienced. And like you say, that's where it gets a bit more tricky. So you always try to have like an experienced guy with a less experienced guy in the car. But I mean, the gravel stage again was an example of that. Like there was 14 gravel sectors, and we covered every single sector. Which is actually pretty good, considering that the cars weren't allowed to drive on the gravel, so they had to find ways from each point to another, and it was a big loop. So there's plenty that goes into it, and it's fucking important these days. It's just the reality of it. If you don't eat, you don't eat, you don't shit, you die, isn't it what they say?
You mentioned the gravel before earlier. You had your take on that. I listened to Brad Wiggins the other day. Actually, he was on Lance Armstrong's pod.
Oh yeah, I saw he's there.
Yeah, he said like his opinion has no place in the Tour de France.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think so either. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fucking good to watch, but it is stressful, and it's like maybe they tried, like Remco tried and Pogačar tried to make a difference on GC on that gravel stage, but ultimately there wasn't a difference. And there was never really going to be a big difference. The Tour was not going to be won on that gravel stage. But certainly you could have a crash or a flat tire or a mechanical at the wrong time. And like imagine if Tratnik hadn't given his bike to Vingegaard, and Vingegaard was standing there like Tratnik was standing there waiting for a bike. Tour over, minutes behind. All because of the gravel stage. And imagine you think of the last 2 years of the Tour de France, where it's been like this ding-dong battle for the better part of 2.5 weeks between Pogačar and Vingegaard. And there was no one else in the game. It was just those two guys. Imagine there's a gravel stage on stage 9 last year or the year before, and it happens to one of those guys where they lose minutes because of a mechanical or something like that. Then you had excitement for one day, but now the tour is boring as shit for the next 10 because the GC's done. This guy's got 7 minutes in front of second place. It's like, so there's like there's a bit of a balance there that like could easily tip in the wrong direction. And like we have gravel, there is such thing as as professional gravel racing now, and there's professional mountain biking and there's professional road racing. Of course, Strade Bianche is different because it's a one-day race and the teams prepare for that, and everybody understands the risks and the elements of that race, and it's the same as Paris-Roubaix. So there's a place for Strade Bianche, but inside a Grand Tour, I don't think so.
But there's no tail to Strade Bianche, as you said. It's not going to affect the back end like it would the Tour de France. So
exactly,
it's a one-day race.
Yeah, and Jonas would choose not to do that race. It doesn't suit him, so he won't do it. So it doesn't matter. Whereas this one, he's forced to. Yeah. My and I've said this even when they used to do the cobbles. A lot of people loved having the cobbles in it as well. But for me, it's the same sort of take. Yes, as a spectator, we all love it. There's no one that doesn't love watching that stage. The other day, that was amazing. And I haven't stayed up to watch right through to the end of many of the stages this year. I just watched the highlights again the next day, watched to whatever time, and then watch the end the next morning. Whereas I did stay through to 2 a.m. here in Australia to watch the gravel. It was awesome. The teams are getting bigger. There's so much talk about safety, and if you're putting in whatever $15 to $30 million a year, do you want to put that investment out there and then just say, right, okay, I might lose all of my investment because someone's going to get a puncture or crash because we don't really care about safety as much as we're saying we do care about safety. It's a pretty bad investment, $30 million towards a race or a team that might get a puncture on the gravel, and that's the end of their chances.
You're relying on some luck.
Yeah, just pure luck. Here's $30 million. Go and race this race, and just let's hope that you can get to the end of it.
And
it's like a pretty silly thing.
The ASO did their best, I think, to I mean, we don't need to beat around the bush. The gravel stages in the Tour de France this year for the viewers. They want bums on seats, and they got them. But at the same time, they did do their best to try to make those sectors as safe as possible. They kind of groomed them a little bit. They filled in any holes and all that stuff. So they did their part in that sense. But the reality is, you're still on gravel, on a road bike, and the tire is still only 30 millimeters wide. It's the chances of puncturing on the gravel. Everybody knows without even having to say it. It's far higher than it is on the road, and it's a road race. So it's in so many ways it just doesn't make sense other than the entertainment value.
One thing we were talking about earlier is obviously Cav breaking the record. I have to say there was one thing that I was really disappointed with, and that was no tears from Cav. Like, 2 years ago when he was with Bahrain and he thought he was going to retire, and that very emotional press conference, Scotty, remember we used to struggle to line his mic up. He had the sort of Stevie Wonders when he waved the head around and he talked real low, but he always was an emotional cat. And I would have thought, given how much it could have all been over and the big chats about does he go on again and try and get the record, and he did it, I was expecting a full slump to the ground, tears, but he kept it together. I couldn't believe it.
Do you know what it is? It's probably Cav's mindset, and this is the reason why he's won 35 stages and he's won them across 16 years, is he probably crossed that finish line, and you could see he was obviously elated. And then he probably within 5 minutes, he thought, fuck it, 36.
Yeah.
I
got to extend the lead.
Yeah.
Because I loved how he said to Pog, like, don't you go breaking it. Afterwards.
Yeah. That was proof. It was to him. It was proof that, of course I can do 36 or 37. Why, I didn't think he'd do it. I truly didn't think he'd get to 35. I just thought that, pure speed, you look at Philipsen last year and, Groenewegen and these guys, I just thought there'd be someone that's going to beat him, that someone's going to be quicker. And what I felt from the sprint stages is that whoever's had the cleanest run has had enough to win. So there's no one. So at the Giro, Jonathan Milan would, ride the last 500 meters out in the wind and then still outsprint everybody. Whereas no one's doing that at the Tour. Like if you don't get a clear run, you've wasted too much energy in that last kilometre. And on that particular day, Cav was amazing the way he just surfed the peloton through the middle there.
It was textbook sprint.
Yeah.
And that's the advantage of having won that many stages all from sprints, is that you've seen every single scenario, and like he's class. There's just no doubt about it. And the way he executed that sprint was why he won. And he was fast then as well, but he was fast, like you say, Scotty, because he executed the sprint well and the lead up to that sprint well. But he's not faster than anybody else there really. And none of those sprinters are really faster than each other. Like you say, it's okay. Biniam's won 2 now. He may go on to win some more. But I still think there's not that dominance of Philipsen last year. And it makes the sprints good because there's 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that could win. There's a sprint again today. They could win. Any of those guys could win. I think probably the fastest sprinter at the moment is Groenewegen actually. But again, you still have to get a clean run because he's not so much faster.
How much has it changed, Bewls? What do they do on the rest days now? They all talk about having to spin the legs. Every rider's different. But after talking to Durbo at the start of the potty and how they are recovering better and that, is it changed or is it still pretty much the same? Or how's it work?
I think it's pretty much the status quo still. Yeah, everybody's different. I think the first rest day is certainly different to the second rest day, and it also depends on what stage you have the next day. So, for example, today's a sprint stage. Yesterday was a rest day. You could get away with just doing an hour, or you could get away with doing nothing because the stage itself today is not going to be. It's not going to be a hard start. We've seen the sprints how they've already this tour is they're trying to push people into the breakaways. So you could get away with doing nothing on the rest day. And then if it's a mountain stage the next day, you've got to keep the engine running a little bit. And then the same thing on the second rest day. The second rest day, you're obviously deeper into the race. That's where you start to really get to the point where you can risk your body swelling up with water, inflammation, all of that kind of stuff, or the body's kind of shutting down because you've been on the limit by that point, you've been on the limit for 15 days, 15 stages. And then you decide not to do anything on the rest day. The body goes, oh, it's over, and then the race starts the next day. And if it's a hard start, then I've nearly been out of Grand Tours multiple times because I didn't do enough on the rest day. And then I got shit scared of it at the point where I was doing on the second rest day in the Vuelta one year, I did 3 hours with 45 minutes motor pacing just to make sure that I could be on the next day. And I still one of the first guys dropped, but I got through it. But I don't know. I think everyone does the same thing.
Jonesy, you remember like from the other side of the fence, right? So working on the tour. So you worked on the tour with the team, but so I don't know. I'm sure it was hard. But even when we're doing the Fox Sports stuff, you just go every day right through to 11 p.m. every night, and then probably maybe not the Monday, but maybe the Tuesday after the tour. Just that real, you could probably do another week working on it. Now, riding, look, seems silly to compare racing the tour compared to just working on it, but everyone kind of has the same effect that you've got 3 weeks. You put your mind to it, and every day you get up, you keep going, and then once you stop. Because you're rude.
The funniest was one year in Paris. We were sitting around having, I think it was lunch or late breakfast. I said to Scotty,
Is this me again? This is me again.
I go to Scotty, what time's your flight out of Paris? He goes, I don't know, mate. 3 o'clock or no? I think
I thought it was later that night. I thought it was like a 8 p.m. or something. That's what I thought.
Yeah, and I don't know how, but I looked at your pass or something. I said, mate, you're off in like an hour, and you're like, what? And I just remember just the mad dash and zigzagging through traffic and just getting there. And you're meant to take the tripod back or whatever, and we forgot that. But you just made it literally within a minute.
Well, they'd had Bewls, Charles de Gaulle. They had the like temporary check-in counters, so they'd loaded all the machines up onto the trolley to then go away from that. Like they were leaving.
Right.
So I'm on this flight. And this was a connecting, I think it was to Dubai, the first leg, Paris to Dubai, and then back to Australia. And they're like, oh, sorry, too late. And I said, but I'm going to Australia. As soon as I said that, they realised that, so transfer in Dubai then to Australia. Oh, well, hang on. So they plugged the machine back in again, printed out my boarding pass, and I went through. Like in the middle of Paris, having lunch, onto about our 5th or 6th bottle of rosé.
Yeah.
And an hour and a half to get to the airport, to get to my flight. Go.
Yeah.
Imagine
stressful.
that.
But it's funny how you get to the back end of any of those races and you're pinned like that. I used to get crook a week after that, and even you found it, Bewls, even as a DS, you're not actually pushing the pedals, but even the mental exhaustion when you get on the back end, like you cooked.
Yeah, because you like you said, you kind of on all day, and like you want to, like as a DS, you are pretty much on all day, and it depends. Like at the Tour de France, actually, I was kind of surprised a little bit, like how, maybe relax is not the right word, but like I'd never felt like I was under the pump there. And I think it's because you've got a larger group of staff, so you've got like the workload shared a little bit more. And the role I had there was actually like a role that wasn't like massively labor intensive. So it was a little bit more relaxing. And saying that I was only there for 5 days, maybe I'll be saying something different if I was there for 21 days. But I think just in general, because we had 4 sports directors there instead of 3. We had a coach there, which we often we won't have a coach there at a race.
Do you have people that do the beds like Ineos? Yeah, pillow fluffers.
Yeah, we got pillow fluffers. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Is there any rotating staff? Like you'll have some come in and do first half, then just give them a break. They're all the same crew. They're all the way through.
Nah, a couple. The doctors rotate, so we have a doctor, two different doctors across the race. Osteo as well, osteo physio. So Andy Gerrans was there until the first rest day, and then another physio or osteo came in for the second half of the race. Coaches swapped in and out. But otherwise, mechanics, soigneurs, sports directors, chef, nutritionists, they all stay the same.
You'll be going back, will you? You're going to go back and do the last week?
Oh, no, but
his brain was doing a bit of a cartwheel then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was a part of me that thought like, I wonder if I should. And then, but the team's been great, like because they. Obviously they just woke up to a message in the morning from me saying like, "Hey guys, sorry I've gone and I've taken a car," and they're like, "Oh fuck!" So they had to like readjust the whole day and everything. And then the head sports director, the lead sports director of Tour de France, is also the head director in the team. He called me like 2 days later and was like, "Mate, just enjoy your time at home with the family." So really appreciated all that from them. Like no pressure from them, or like. Not that there ever was going to be, but like, there's always a world where they call you and go like, "Oh, what do you think about coming back?" But I never even had to have that conversation. They were just like, "Nah, you're out. Go home and enjoy the family."
So what's going to happen with the team in this block, Bewls? We've got a stage win in there, or what's happening?
For sure, yeah. I mean, Derek was close on the gravel day. He had a hell of a ride, actually, and that's he's bumped himself up into the top 10 because of that breakaway being successful. And well, not just that, the breakaway was successful, obviously, and then a lot of GC guys got dropped from the Pogacar group. So he moved up to top 10 on GC, but the goal's still stage win. And you know he's far enough down on GC that Pogacar and those guys they're not going to be too stressed about him if he's in a breakaway in the mountains up the road by a couple of minutes. So that'd be the goal. I still just keep the momentum going with breakaways, and it's different to what I thought, and maybe a lot of people thought. Like given when you looked at how the Giro was raced, where breakaways just didn't have a chance. There was a little bit of that at the Tour as well. Like, are breakaways are we going to have the chance to win? Because the breakaways, are they going to give the breakaways any leeway, or they're just going to try to win a whole bunch of stages? But you can see that the way UAE's racing, they're happy for breakaways to win, and Visma the same. Obviously, that won't happen every day, but it's promising, you know, and teams are feeling motivated to be in the breakaways because they know that there's a good chance they're going to have success. So that's the strategy for our team for the next part of the race. And there's some good days coming up for quite a few of our riders. So
it's split in half. It's split in half, isn't it? So sprint stages are controlled by the sprints teams, and no breaks are going. GC days, GC state teams controlling it. And they're happy to mix it up. With Derek, he's been incredible actually. So I'll give him extra credit, as I'm sure you do, Bewls. Tracky, Canadian track rider. Good on him. Because he's now back in the top 10. Dream scenario. Pog and the boys are truly not going to be too concerned about him. Even if he was a couple of minutes in the lead now, we've got all the mountains still to come. I don't reckon they'd be too concerned about him in the big mountains. He might be able to end up in the yellow jersey. He might be able to get into a break that takes, I don't know, how many minutes down is he?
Oh, he's like 5, I think.
Could give him one of those old school breaks that take 7 minutes, and you chase, you chase, you chase, and no one chases, and who knows?
5 minutes is actually still close enough for that to happen. It'd just be whether or not, like, now that the race is, I could see that happening. I could have seen that happening earlier in the race. Like, let's say, so Derek finishes on bunch time stage 1. If he was in that breakaway on stage 2 in Bologna and San Luca, there, I would hazard a guess that Pogacar or UAE would have been happy for him to take the yellow jersey that day. Because, I mean, the reason I say that is because they were fucking putting the brakes on in the finish, trying not to take the yellow. So it could have happened then. I don't know about now, because, like, now it might be like, oh, we're close enough. We're halfway through the race. We can kind of keep the yellow jersey, but it is possible at 5 minutes, because it's not. You just need the right break in the day where they're like, oh, we're happy. But the hard thing for Derek now will be, it won't be Pogacar and those guys. It'll be like the guy that's 8th on GC. You know, all of a sudden Derek's in the breakaway and he's 30 seconds or 1 minute off the guy and 6th on GC, and then now that team starts chasing. That's where things start to get more difficult, because if you have guys who are there riding GC, and Derek is 9th on GC, but that wasn't the plan to ride GC really. It was more about, like, let's stay close on time, go on those breakaways, and that might pop you into the top 10, which it has done at the point. But there's guys there that are 10th on GC or 8th on GC or 7th on GC there that are there to ride GC. So they'll defend those spots. That's where it gets a little bit harder. But you can only defend so much if you're trying to chase a breakaway of 20 guys and Derek's in there, and it's, and fucking whoever it is, AG2R or whatever, chuck a couple of guys on the front. It's not easy.
Yeah, well, it's not, and it's not like he's trying to get a winning margin on the DC. It's simply just 5 seconds in front of Pog. That's he takes the lead, and no doubt the next couple of mountain stages he'd probably lose it again. But it'll be interesting. Yeah, speculation. Yeah. Who knows? I just think back to like the early days, me watching the Tour, and Steve Bauer and these guys going in the break, and Chiappucci taking 15 minutes in the first couple of stages or whatever, and then holding on all the way towards the end and still finishing on the podium. Those days are long, long gone.
Yeah, like remember when Voigtler had the yellow jersey for like 12 days or 14 days or something.
You
Because they gave him like 20 minutes. And like there was heaps of days like that where they're like, oh, we'll give this. Like Lance would be like, out of all the tours he won, like if you look back at the results, there was often periods of those tours where he'd be like 27th on GC at like 12 minutes, you know, and then he'd win it at the end of the race. They'd like, it was different back then. It was fucking cool, actually. I hope they do that again.
Oscar Pereiro.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think how far behind he was. He was miles behind.
Oh,
he was half a day behind, and then came back to win it. Got in the break. Yeah.
Well, then they pinged Landis for drugs.
Yeah, Landis.
Landis won, eh?
Yeah. Pereiro was in the break.
He was off GC that day. Landis.
Yeah, he was. He also took 20 minutes, whatever, in one day.
Yeah. Fell asleep with a testosterone patch on his Jats crackers.
All right. Before we wrap it up, then let's just go around the room. Who we ask what our guest is? Well, the one guest we've had since the tour started. Who's going to win Tour de France
overall?
Yeah.
For me, it's Pog.
I think Pog, but I reckon Remco is a very big smoky, guys. Very big smoky.
I think Jonas is far better than he was perhaps even expecting to be. And he got criticised especially by Remco, but Remco doesn't mind, throwing stones, especially on a gravel stage. Pardon the pun. But Jonas is not. Why would you waste any energy? He's always been talking about saving as much as he possibly can. He's just going to follow wheels and see what happens. So
why would you? For sure. Why would you ride with those two guys and then open yourself up to get attacked by them later in the race? Fuck that. Like, safety in numbers. Just your teammates around you, then you can fix any situation. But if you put yourself out there, and it's just you, Pog, and Remco, and you know the race, they're going to attack you, and eventually you're either going to be able to follow them or you're going to get dropped, and then you're really fucked because you've got no teammates. So yeah, he did the right thing. I think I agree that I think Pog's going to win, but he's not going to have it all his own way.
Last week's going to be awesome. Because if the Giro does eventually catch up to him, like it should, and obviously Vinegar's going to be on the up, and then Remco's a smoky. Yeah. So the three, it's going to be a ding-dong battle, Bewls, but we're hoping that you guys can get a stage win.
Yeah.
And it'll all come down to the bottle points, so you'll have a big part in that.
That's it. We're well fed and well hydrated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And that's one team. That's every team doing the same thing, all scrambling every day with staff. It's the stuff behind the scenes that no one gets to see.
Yeah. Well, it's been good having Scooter on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Scotty. It's good to see you.
Pleasure. Yeah, it's good, mate. Am I going to see you in Paris? Are you going to be at the Olympics?
No, I won't be there. No, I'm not coming.
Mate, the Kiwi team should bring you in just to work with them.
Just motivate them in the village.
Yeah, just hang out. I'll just come and watch other sports.
Men's Madison. Actually, women's team pursuit, certainly in the mix, and the men's Madison with your mate, Gady.
For
sure. They're going to be right up there.
Yeah. They've got a good shot for a few golds, the New Zealand track team. Like you say, the women's team pursuit. Especially now the Katie Archibald's injured and can't go. That's obviously weakened the British team. This is a shame for them, a shame for her. But.
Oh, and look, everybody feels for Katie's lovely. She's amazing. This happened, all those breaks and injuries just falling down the stairs, I think it was. Takes her out of the Olympics. And it was only 18 months ago that her partner died, had a cardiac arrest in bed next to her. 18 months later, she now misses out on going to the Olympics as a favourite for 2 gold medals.
Yeah.
I hope she's got a really good support team around her because she needs it. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, if you need a place to crash, Bewls, Scotty said he'll roll out a mattress. So
yeah. I think I can smell shit. I got to go change a nappy.
Righto, mate. Like, share, subscribe.